And we are recording. First of all, thanks to everyone who is watching this interview. I am your host, Abraham L. Jaguar, and I am going to be interviewing Luke Stratton, the creator of Pirate Borg. Thank you
Guilty.
so much, Luke, for
Guilty as
being here.
charged. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, Luke, before we go deeper into many things, tell us about your current projects.
Oh, well, my big project at the moment is The Dark Caribbean, which is the setting book that I've always intended to make, but then got sidetracked by making Pirate Borg. It's going to be not just a Pirate Borg book. I think it's going to be an OSR book that's basically got all the major, maybe all of the islands, but all of the major islands in the Caribbean with kind of emergent gameplay, table-driven adventure style writing. And then in the back, we'll all have a bunch of like kind of generic locations that you can play, or not generic, but I'd say locations that could be placed wherever you'd like. They aren't like,
Flexible
yeah,
location.
yeah, like in Forbidden Lands, they call them adventure sites. So like, for example, we have a temple that's like a snake temple. Like, I'm not going to say what island that's on, but if you need a snake temple, boom, you've got one.
Hmm. Now, look, when it comes to your origins as a tabletop role player, when did you get started with tabletop RPGs?
Oh, well, my first role playing a game experience, and I've told this story a couple times, so I won't be too verbose about it. But when I was, I think 14 or 15, my cousin invited me to come play a game. It was kind of like a homebrew game of Aliens, the RPG. I think it was actually written by Leading Edge, but he had like hacked enough and written his own material. But the character sheets was from Leading Edge's Aliens. And I just had a blast. I didn't really pick it up as a hobby, like a ongoing hobby until more recently in the past 5 years or so. But that was like my first fix. And then there have been a few moments throughout my life where I've run games for my brother or for other people that have really got me hooked. It wasn't really
Mm.
until a couple years before COVID that I started playing regularly, and then during the lockdown, I started making content professionally.
Okay. Would you say that you are most of the time a player or a game master?
These days, most of the time, I'm a creator. I would
Agree.
say I actually was always a GM before. I would play every now and then. Um, but as I've become a like professional creator, there have been more opportunities for me to play. Actually, I play a lot at cons, and we started a meetup.com group called Ship of the Dead, which is also the name of my podcast. And in that group, like we formatted it so that there are multiple blocks, almost like a little mini convention. So, like for example, tomorrow I'm going to run Pirate Borg at 7 o'clock, but at 3 o'clock I'm going to play Shadow Dark. So it's a fun way for me to get to do both. I'd say I probably enjoy GMing overall more because I really like world building. Um, but I think sometimes I have a lot of fun GMing OSR games, but back when it was like fifth edition for me, I actually preferred to play because you don't have there's like less stress on you as a you know participant. You can just get in character. Like last night, I played on a live stream and I got to play Pirate Borg, and it was so much fun because I just got to let loose and be this one character.
Hmm. Now, were pirates always a thing for you? Were you in love with the whole pirate theme from the very start, or is it somewhat recent?
Oh no, it's been a lifelong obsession, I guess. I definitely I have a couple of funny stories. The first thing was that I rode the Pirates of the Caribbean ride back in the 80s, way before the movies. And I
Mm.
had pirate Lego sets. I was always really into Lego sets and history. I remember being really into like Egyptian mythology and the Where's Waldo book where he would travel through time. And I would like always really liked the like feudal Japan and the pirate one and medieval, but I had a Lego pirate ship. And that was like my first real hook. But over the years, I've gone to numerous pirate costume parties, and I've played tons of pirate video games and pirate board games, and it's just kind of like part of my personality. I just really love the lore and the like fantasy of like sailing the Caribbean waters looking for treasure and running from undead.
And I think there are just so many possibilities, all of those islands, all of those
Oh yeah.
uncharted places.
Yeah,
Which
I
one
think.
would you say is your favorite pirate video game?
Oh man. Well, I'm gonna have to I have to mention a couple because there's probably five actually. I'll just rattle them off really quickly.
Hmm.
I think the biggest inspiration for me is The Secret of Monkey Island.
Ah,
Both the first one and the second one. Love those games, and they really like helped captivate my imagination of like what like these undead pirates aren't just like endless like mobs. They're like LeChuck has like things that he really wants. And the way they mixed in voodoo and kind of a little bit of like humor. I love that game. Sid Meier's Pirates really captured my imagination, and I played the black and white version on the Mac back in the day, and then I played the Xbox version in 2003. Loved that game. 100% completed that, and that was really a big inspiration. But in that game, like it's not you're not it's not like a third person or first person really. I mean, you get to do some fighting, but like it's not like open, and it is open world, but it's not like open world like the modern games. So when Assassin's Creed Black Flag came along, that game was everything to me, except it didn't have any fantasy. So really really great game, open world. But then I think the modern answer is Sea of Thieves. Now it's
hmm.
styled a little bit more cartoony. But at this point now we've got Pirates of the Caribbean expansions, and we have a new Monkey Island expansion. So it really scratches a lot of itches. Unfortunately, I don't have as much time to play video games anymore because every time I boot one up, I get inspired to like work on an adventure or something. So
Hmm. I think my favorite one is Sid Meier's Pirates, especially with the whole revenge theme. I think they handle
what
it quite
which
great.
which one the
The
like
one from the PSP. I played it on the PSP.
oh yeah. So that's like the kind of the reboot, if you will. Yeah, incredible game. I kind
Hmm.
of want them to do another one, except that Assassin's Creed Black Flag is almost what that game, like what I wanted that game to be. But man, really great game. I would not mind if they did like they keep making Civilization, so why not make another Pirates?
Hmm. Now, when it comes to Pirate Borg, when was the moment where you saw Merc Borg and you thought that would be great if we added a few pirate
Yeah.
tweaks?
Yeah, well, I've told this story a bunch too, but I'll still, give you the abridged version here. So I was running a Tales of the Caribbean 5e campaign, and in my 5e campaign, I've hacked them a lot so that level cap at 6, and you can't take long rests at sea, and pick these classes, and if you're going to play a bard, just like we were doing all these like re-themes to make it work for pirates, and I was running my Patreon, which is a mostly pirate maps, um, and I was getting pretty burnt out from having to work on that all the time. This is over quarantine, having to work on that and having to, prep my game because it was a lot to prep. And so we took a break, and my buddy ran Morkborg, and we had like the most fun we've ever had playing a role playing game, I think. Just an absolute riot. And like, at first I thought the lack of rules was going to like hurt the experience, but it really like made the experience better because there weren't these things in the way, and the grim dark kind of gallows humor nature of it just works so well for pirates. So I ended up thinking like, oh, I should just do a zine and hack this to play, in a pirate setting. And one thing led to another, and then by the time I was done, it was like a fully fleshed out book. And then by the time the Kickstarter had finished, it was triple the size of Morkborg or something. So, or double the size and triple the word count, I think. So
Mm. Now, when it comes to how you envision the setting of Pirate Borg, do you think it's more like a horror action comedy sort of thing, or did you have something else in mind?
well, the cool thing I think about Pirate Borg is that it can be really easily adapted to different kinds of play style. We hear about a lot of people who are, like they're doing a more eldritch horror Call of Cthulhu pirate thing. And then there are other people who are like, hey, you know what? We've actually stepped back on the undead a bit, and we're doing more of a like kind of Sea of Thieves fun pirate campaign. So it actually really works well for both. In my mind, the setting, the Dark Caribbean, is also a mix of both. I love this idea, kind of like in that movie Midsummer, where you've got this very bright and colorful palette, but then there's like absolutely horrible things happening. That's kind of like the pitch for the beginning of the Dark Caribbean campaign. You know, you're sailing around and there's beautiful beaches, and you can have those moments of carousing and like, you know, having fun on the beach and just imagining a wonderful place. But then the undead show up and it's not so happy anymore. And then if you're playing a long campaign, you know, that can progress so that you go from this bright sunny world to like dark stormy skies and rough seas, and then the maelstrom opens and, you know, the abyss opens, and then before you know it, you're like apocalypse, you know, zombie game, which can work great. I mean, it's really up to you how you want to take the campaign, I think.
I think that's one of the strengths of Pirate Borg. It is so versatile in that
Mm-hmm.
regard. Now, when it comes to using parts of real history with the horror fantasy theme, was it too challenging, or it was just so smooth, so easily?
No, it's actually been very challenging because you have to make, like, there's really no way to make a game about history and make everybody happy. I didn't want to make a game about slavery or colonization or all the like terrible parts of human history. Like, I just don't want to gamify those things. So they're not really in my setting. Um, but like my friends over at Firelock Games, they make historical pirate miniature war games, and they're working on a role playing game, and it's going to have all those topics. And like, I think that you can approach those things with the right perspective. But like, I wanted to make like, you know, Call of Cthulhu meets, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, or like we say, Darkest Dungeon meets Sea of Thieves. Like, I don't feel comfortable, you know, dealing with like, oh, we're gonna have a slaver mission where you have to go free these slaves, or like you're attacked by natives. Like, yeah, you can put those in your game, but I think for this setting, like, I wanted the emphasis to be like it's inspired by history, but like this is really more a game about fantasy, you know. So that actually has been hard to navigate, to figure out like, well, you know, like if, for example, at one point the sorcerer was called a Bokor, which is a voodoo sorcerer, but you know, that's an actively practiced religion, and it like kind of pushed out the concept of like a Lovecraftian sorcerer. So like we've had to make decisions like that along the way to just, you know, feel good with ourselves as creators and make the kind of experience that we want to be like making. But when it comes to like the other side of it, drawing from history, like I've had a great time learning. I mean, I knew a decent amount about pirate lore and history before, but now I'm consider myself almost like a learned scholar, and then I've read a decent amount of books and done a lot of research on, you know, things like the Inquisition and moving that forward in time so it lines up with piracy and the conquistadors, and learning about Ponce de Leon and the real pirates of Nassau, and like characters like Captain Kidd and Henry Morgan are like their stories. There's a reason all those early like swashbuckling films were based on these guys, because these guys' stories are so captivating. To throw them in a role playing game is just so much fun, you know. So it's a little bit of both. It's been, in some ways, it's really, really inspiring to draw from history because, you know, oh, I need a hook. Like, what do I name this part of the island? Oh, I'll just name it the real thing. Or like in the Dark Caribbean, a lot of the islands, I like a lot of the islands are less inhabited because of this undead presence. So a lot of them I've kept their like original Tiano or Carib Indian names to kind of like, you know, diversify the setting. It's not such a like European washed setting. That's kind of the vibe. But that's been really fun to learn and steal ideas from history. You know, I just really love the idea that like, you know, right now I'm working on Ponce de Leon. He's going to be like a necro ent, where he's like,
Mm.
because of the Fountain of Youth, he's like,
Uh-huh.
he's the governor of San Juan, but he's like, nobody sees him because he's this giant tree necro creature that controls the island, you know. Or like Blackbeard's a sorcerer and he's actually you know, a necromancer. And that, I love just taking those little like hints from history and like rocking them into their full fantasy potential in a role-playing game.
I think that's excellent. During your research concerning pirate lore and all of that, do you have like any obscure things that you want to share with us? Considering this is Friday the 13th in October, I
Oh,
think.
yes, it is. Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple years ago now, I actually ran a little four shot. It was like a Halloween four shot where, and it was, you know, I didn't have Pirate Borg yet, so we ran it in fifth edition, but I wrote these classes where everybody got to pick an undead class. And basically the hook was, and this, everything I'm about to say is real. Henry Morgan was basically the like most famous privateer of the time. And for a while there, even though he was sailing under the direction of the governor of Jamaica, he wasn't sanctioned by England. And he was, for all intents and purposes, a pirate sacking like Spanish ships and ports and forts and stuff. Well, he ended up like getting like extradited back to the England to appease the Spanish. They were gonna arrest him, but he was like so impressive and imparted so much lore that the king actually knighted him. So then he came back and was like the functioning governor of Jamaica before he died. So he died in like I think in the 1680s maybe, and then in 1696 there was a massive, like huge earthquake that basically destroyed Port Royal as a city. And the church and burial ground where Henry Morgan was buried was actually washed into the sea. So for this like hook campaign that I did, that we're going to pull elements into the Dark Caribbean, basically Morgan's body is washed into the ocean and kicked his ghost back into action. And he's called forth a gang of ghost pirates to go like scout out where his body was buried, fall into the ocean, find a map, and then go find, Henry Morgan's like hidden treasure. So like, I love just mixing those like historic details, things that really happened that don't even seem like they could have really happened. And then like putting the like ghost pirate twist on them.
Mm. I think that's excellent because you have pretty much infinite adventure seeds and campaign ideas, just taking a look at those stories and giving those twists. Now, when it comes to the Skull and Crossbones, the Jolly Roger itself, did you find like some interesting historical details about it?
Yeah, I actually have a book. Do I have it right here? So one of my Patreon, I can't see it right now, but I'm working on a Patreon release that's going to be like a Jolly Roger flag building kit. So it'll basically come with like blank flags and then all kinds of different icons that you could draw, drag on in a virtual tabletop or in like Photoshop, excuse me, to make your own flag for your team. Very like kind of One Piece kind of inspiration. And I bought this book on, historical Jolly Rogers and like, I want to pull all the real ones in. And the reality is that there are only like maybe 2 or 3 that are really historically accurate. Like if you do the real research, like a lot, like Jack Rackham's, I think is like totally an illustrated like fabrication, despite it being like, if you go Google Jolly Rogers, you see that's like the first one that comes up, the skull with the swords, so yeah, and one thing, a little historic factoid I can throw in is that historically the black flag meant you surrender, or we're going to hurt you. And if you surrender, we're just going to take your loot. And the red flag meant, hey, we're going to kill you. Be prepared to die, So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, you wish that they really had made that more of a thing in the historic times, but it's not quite, unfortunately, as many things are with piracy and its lore. It's not quite as prevalent as you'd think.
I wanted to throw in something to serve as inspiration for Pirate Borg adventures and campaigns, even because there is this book. YouTube usually doesn't like this book because it has some uncomfortable things. So I'm going to YouTube disclaimer: this is science fiction. This is not real. This is Robert Sepper's 1666 Redemption Through Sin.
Oh, I'm not familiar with this.
No, it's one of the books that you. So let me read this because this is very interesting concerning the Skull and Crossbones.
Oh, okay, great.
It says here, whenever we see a pirate ship on television, in movies, or in comic books, we also see an extremely ancient symbol, the Skull and Crossbones. This symbol, however, was not always of death or poison, but instead it had another occult meaning. The official symbol of the Skull and Bones Secret Society is a human skull sitting atop 2 human bones crossed like an X, underneath of which is the number 322. People throughout the world have speculated as to the true meaning of this 322, which, according to Anthony Sutton, goes back to ancient times, the origins of pirates, according to this. The order is descended from a Greek fraternal society dating back to Demosthenes in 322 BC. That's why there is 322.
Oh, wow.
This has perhaps some credibility because Bones records are dated by adding 322 to the current year. Records originating in 1950 are dated Demosthenes 2272. But here's where things get really creepy. It says, in the book The Holy Blood and Holy Grail by Vagant, Lay and Lincoln tell the tale this way. A great lady of Maraclea was loved by a Templar, Knights Templar, by a Templar, a lord of Sidon, but she died in her youth. And on the night of her burial, this wicked lover crept to the grave, dug up her body, and did something to it that I cannot say in YouTube. You probably imagine the R
Yes.
word or the
Yeah,
V
yeah,
word.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
says, he opened the grave and found the head on the leg bones of the skeleton, skull and crossbones. So then they mention how Sidon was a port known for pirates, a nest of pirates, and how this goes throughout history up to Yale, the Skull and Bone Society. So I think
Yeah, yeah.
for adventure ideas, you could handle those things when it comes to the skull and crossbones of the Jolly Roger.
Yeah, I love the idea of it being like part of a secret society, you know.
Yeah, because I always wonder why do they have like a skull and two crossbones? Why? Oh.
Yeah, where did that come from? Yeah. And I think a lot of it just gets like thrown into the zeitgeist and recycled through different tropes and stuff. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that symbol is it's magnanimous, you know.
Mhm. Now, when it comes to the enemies, the bestiary of Pirate Borg, what were your major influences for those?
Um, well, you know, I think I had been playing a lot of 5e, like I said, and one thing I really disliked about the system in 5e is that as your characters get more powerful, you have to change the kind of monsters that they fight. And I really wanted to run a campaign where like a gang of skeletons was always an issue, you know. So I think out of all the monsters in there, there's the most skeletons. I think there's 6 types of skeleton plus the necromancer captain archetype. And then, you know, I really love that Watchmen like in-world comic called Tales from the Black Freighter, where this you know, sailor becomes ship like his ship is destroyed by this like, you know, kind of undead galleon, and he has to build a raft out of his sailor's body parts to like make it to land, and then he thinks that the galleon is coming to destroy his family, so he ends up like trying to protect his family, but he ends up actually killing his family. It's like this really dark, twisted tale. But when I watched that, because they did an animated version, and when I read it in the actual Watchmen comic, I love this idea of just like, oh, you're on a raft and there's like floating heads of zombies everywhere, and they attack out of nowhere, you know, and I like just classic undead, Evil Dead, Army of Darkness. You know, a lot of the monsters in Darkest Dungeon were a big inspiration. Like, I just kind of love the classic undead vibe. And since I got to write my own game, like there was never an issue where, okay, well, once they're too powerful, skeletons won't be a danger. You can always make them, you know, dangerous. And then if you go a step further, I think that Lovecraftian monsters, and I say Lovecraft, but really I mean like what the industry, if you will, has done with Lovecraft since his writings, like the way they've been, you know, like Sandy Peterson's like stuff, and the way that Darkest Dungeon kind of takes a twist on Lovecraftian monsters. Like that's my idea for like later campaign. You know, we have a Coral Shoggoth in there, and you get that kind of like really eldritch horror thing coming out of the sea, and like the sea is such a good place for inspiration. You just all you need to do is look up, you know, nature documentaries to come up with like great ideas for sea monsters. So.
Those things in the abyss.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, you know, and then you've got undead, anything undead. So you could be like whales that are undead. We have like an undead megalodon in there that just vomits up dead pirates onto your ship's deck. And you know, of course, the Kraken. One of the twists in Pirate Borg is I really like dragon turtles, and I really like sea turtles. So we made Davy Jones is actually a giant sea turtle. instead of, you know, a sailor. Maybe he was at one point, but I just love this idea that you fall in the water and you see this like sea turtle that's the size of a ship, you know?
Mhm. Now, when it comes to the battle system for the ships, the ship combat,
Mm-hmm.
I think that could have been quite challenging because I look at it and I think, wow, this is very balanced when it comes to streamlining things, but also adding that depth of repairing the ship, paying the crew, all of that. Tell us about it. Was it really challenging to design that?
Yeah, actually, it's an iteration from another rule set that I wrote for 5th edition called Limithron's Guide to Naval Combat, which I came up with because there wasn't a good naval combat system. And all the ones that I found were way too crunchy, or like they, you know, they were like one guy gets to do everything, or like, you know, your characters, especially in 5th edition, that you like, oh well, if your character, the brute or the barbarian with really high strength, he's only really good at one thing on the ship, so he ends up doing that all the time, and if that thing's not fun, it gets boring, you know. So I've played a lot of pirate ship games over the years. I played a lot of Pirates of the Spanish Main from Wids Kids, and then over quarantine I played a lot of Oak and Iron from Firelock Games. And I really like that ship combat, especially on a big scale, like maybe like once or twice a campaign where you team up with the Brethren of the Coast and you've got 4 or 5 ships and you're fighting the British and then sea monsters show up. Well, you need rules for that. Um, so I'd written this Limithron's Guide to Naval Combat thing, and it was really, really well received. And it seems to be like the de facto 5e naval combat system. Well, when we came to writing Pirate Borg, I just basically took the same like the same way that you would change 5e to turn it into Morkborg. It's kind of what I did for the naval combat system. I was like, okay, there's less rules, there's less measuring, there's, you know, basically everybody on the ship gets to do something. Even if you've got 5 players, you're going to get 5 actions on that ship. And they can change every round. And the captain doesn't really do anything but decide how to move the ship and roll initiative. So they can be in charge thematically, but they're not the ones actually firing the guns and stuff. Um, so I think it's turned out pretty well. People seem to really like it. It's definitely crunchier than normal Morkborg, but like it kind of has to be if you're gonna do real naval combat. You know, if you're just gonna do theater of the mind, you don't need complex rules for movement and wind and stuff, because that's not gonna make your naval combat scenario interesting. So the rules are really there for when you're playing on a VTT or in person, and you really want to act out. You know, like if I were me, like I've run a lot of Pirate Borg, and I don't run a lot of naval combat. Like I run it every now and then when it's really a big deal. You know, if it's the like sails, Captain. Oh, it's a merchant ship. Like if you go to naval combat for that kind of scenario, like it ends up being kind of a long thing, and half the time in reality, those ships would just surrender. Like, and the system, while it's designed for ships to be like pretty long lived, they don't really, they have too many hit points and too much armor for it to be like a normal, hey, let's resolve this in 5 rounds of combat thing. Like it doesn't, you can't really, even if you have big ships, you definitely can't resolve combat in 5 rounds. So you either need to make some tweaks to like the win conditions about what the HP is in order to make that happen, or just save that for really big special occasions. So
Now, when it comes to the character classes, what were your major sources of inspiration? Did you just think, oh, I'm just taking the fighter, the wizard, and putting them in pirate mode, or do you have some other sources of inspiration?
no, I mean, I think that it's a mix. Like there's a set of tropes that you expect as picking up a pirate game. But then there are also a set of tropes that work well for role playing games in general. Um, so so for Pirate Borg, I really wanted to like basically convert the BX classes, or like the old school D&D classes. Um, so there's like an analog for kind of each one of them in Pirate Borg, but like when it comes to the mechanics, they work different. Really, it's just like the brute is the barbarian, but you know he doesn't really have a rage ability. He has like pirate abilities, like he can brew grog. You know, um, the swashbuckler is kind of the fighter, but like really the swashbuckler is like the pirate class. You could be good at shooting, or you could be good at fencing, or both. You know, the buccaneer is kind of a ranger in that they're good at tracking and ranged shooting, but in reality, like buccaneers were good at hunting and tracking because they that term comes from when they used to live on these islands and cook these, pigs and goats over the boucan fire. Um, so there's a cleric and there's a wizard. It's the zealot and the sorcerer. But really, it's more because I was able to figure out ways to make those all fit the theme, and because those are all good kind of cornerstones of different styles of role playing. Um, that being said, those are just the 6 core classes. The 2 additional classes are 100% like uniquely Pirate Borg, especially the Tall Tale. So the Haunted Soul will let you play as kind of an undead character. You might be a ghost or a zombie or a skeleton or have vampirism, which are really great options, especially if your character gets killed. Your GM might let you come back as a skeleton, which is very, very fun and very Pirate Borg. But the Tall Tale class will let you play. You can play as a mermaid or an aquatic mutant, like maybe like a deep one. But my favorite part is the sentient animal, where you can actually play as like a fowl, which is the voodoo chicken, or you can play as a rat or a parrot. And I think that if you have a group of players who are really entrenched in Call of Cthulhu or 5th edition D&D, like just have them roll up some characters and make one of them a sentient animal and just watch the chaos like ensue, because there's going to be a lot more laughing. And like a parrot you can't move a treasure chest if you're a parrot. It presents a whole different set of, people are like, well, what does my parrot do when it levels up? And I was like, I don't know, like you decide. Like I'm not going to make a complex skill tree for what a parrot can do. It's a parrot. Like you're a parrot. Sorry, man. Like, so.
Now, I was thinking of running a little example encounter just to see it and show people the sorts of things that you could encounter or experience in Pirate Borg. Are you up for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So this is going to be diceless, of course. No stats, no writing the character shit. Tell us about your character concepts.
Oh man, well, my character concept off the top of my head, of course, he's going to be a wizard. So the sorcerer class. I think he's probably like discovered some tomes. Maybe he's English. He's from London. He in the British Museum, he found some ancient tomes, and they spoke of like a chain of islands that were in the West Indies. So he's like he's maybe learned 1 or 2 spells, and that he's like booked passage aboard a ship, and now he's arrived at this place where the undead are just everywhere. So that's my character.
Would you say that he is capable enough on taking his boat or ship places? Is he knowledgeable in navigation?
He was probably a passenger on his original vessel. But let's say his dad raised him to learn how to tie knots and how to sail. So while he doesn't know how to sail a tall ship, he probably would make the best captain. He does know how to man the rigging and whatnot.
Excellent. Now here are the rules for this session. This is going to be in character all the time. In character, and you cannot ask questions to the game master, because the game master is not going to exist in the game world. Everything through roleplay. I look at this to ascertain its color. I look at that to see the distance between this and that. I try to remember all of that. So everything through roleplay. And I'm not going to ask you, what do you do? If you want, you can actually interrupt me as I described. So you all priority is given to you in your roleplay description.
Great, I'm ready.
Okay, and in first person, in the present, not I'm going to untie the, no, I untie the in the present, in the now.
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay. And so it begins. After talking to an old sea dog, you obtain the information of a small island to the northwest of port. The island is called the Island of the Drowned Scorpion. According to the information, there is a single wooden cabin in the island, and somewhere underneath the cabin, there is treasure, but it is rumored to be cursed. That's why the old sea dog did not go to look for it. You now find yourself in the middle of the sea, navigating your small boat.
Finally back at sea. Gonna see if I've got my magic up and oh, my waist way a bit too powerful for me, I guess. Let me dial that back. I'm gonna turn and look for my quartermaster, Roger. Roger, are you here? Roger, come here, Roger. I know it's just you and me on this little boat, but I believe our ship, the little island we were looking for, is coming up. Roger, do you know what was that guy so spooked about? What curses have you heard about this island?
Well, Captain, I don't really know about these things, but they say that people kept disappearing as they approached the island.
Well, I'm not too worried about that. I guess we'll see if we disappear when we get there, right?
Right, Captain, right.
All right, well, if you need me, I'll be in the stern of our little tiny boat reading my Necronomicon pages that I found in the library.
You immediately hear the sounds of lamentations, groaning, and moaning all around the ship.
Oh,
Captain, what is that?
What the? Oh, hold on. I've got this passage in my. No, I don't think. Yes, right here. I believe this. I can't read what they're saying. I just believe we're getting close.
Captain, I'm scared. What should we do?
Get it together, Roger. We're making for land. There. See the coast shrouded in mist? We're making for that.
Aye, Captain. You suddenly hear the sound of flapping, and all around the ship, at least a dozen decapitated gargoyles flapping. Zoom in to your position. They are carrying bloated corpses. Captain, what's that?
Oh, don't mind them. They're just trying to guard the island. If we need to, I can rouse some of those dead with this necromancy spell that I've learned. But don't worry. We'll make our way through. Keep heading through. Ignore the gargoyles. Ignore them.
As you continue, the gargoyles fly at a breakneck speed and throw 3 corpses on board the ship.
I pull out my spell book and I'm gonna cast Raise the Dead. And since I've just learned the spell, I can only really raise one creature. But
You do that, Captain. You do that.
Yes. Hold on a second. And then one of these that lands. He stands right up and he just sits there ready for me to control him. And I say, "Hey, defend us against these other undead."
The 2 other corpses rise up and engage your minion.
All right. Well, I say attack, and he's gonna claw at them with his claws. We're not rolling dice though, right? So I'm gonna say he hits, and he does D4 damage to one of these other zombies.
Your corpse was going to do it, but it hesitated. He was going to do it, and the other corpses tore him to pieces.
No! Why? Well, in that case, I'll pull out my wood belaying pin and fight myself off these zombies. I will attack the closest one, and if I hit, I'll do D4 damage.
The corpse is now upon you, just within striking distance.
Yes, I'll bat it with my belaying pin.
You hesitated as you were thinking what you were going to do in the future, and it cuts you a bit in the shoulder.
Ah,
Captain, I will help you. Your man fights
this
it.
thing. Re-kill this thing, I should say.
Another corpse approaches you from behind.
I hit it with my belaying pin.
It is cut almost in half.
Just smash through its guts. Its guts go flying. Now, the first one that came at me, are these zombies or are they just animated corpses? Am I in danger of infection?
You find yourself talking to no one in particular.
Oh,
Captain, I don't know, Captain. Were you talking to me? I don't know.
I was thinking, I wonder if these are zombies, if they're gonna. Oh, I can feel its blood coursing through my veins. Quick, we must get to land. Throw this other one off and get us to land right away, Roger.
Aye, Captain. Your man takes care of the other corpse swiftly. You now approach the shore. Captain, I think we can disembark in 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm vomiting right now. Oh, I don't feel so good. I feel like something that zombie gave me is making my insides turn to blackness. Anyway, I believe the cap. Oh, I can see it there on the top of that hill. Make your way. Take us to the cabin, Roger.
Aye, Captain.
Oh, yes, please drag me along. I'm not feeling as well as I once was. Hold on, let me see if I have a necrotic healing spell in my Necronomicon. Oh, look, it's like my gut thing is healed, but somehow I'm turning more scaly and my skin looks pale and it's wet and almost like I have scale. Are these gills, Roger? What's happening to me?
Captain, I don't want to be too close to you. It looks contagious.
It's not contagious. Don't worry. It's something I did in this book. But please lead us on to the cabin.
You are interrupted as a grim reaper looking figure manifests out of nowhere in front of you. The skull moves and with a spectral voice mentions, I can help you with your condition, or I can help you control it. And now we are out of character. That was excellent.
Excellent.
Roleplay, yeah. And I think it was quite immersive despite the briefness as you were describing your actions. And because I actually envisioned everything, and you roleplay a really good pirate. You're obviously quite experienced in.
I've played many of pirates over the years.
That was excellent, perfect. But yes, I also wanted to talk about this when it comes to the included adventure module and the town in the Pirate Borg book. What was? Did you have like a major source of inspiration for that, or was that like organically created during the process?
Yeah. The adventure is called The Curse of Skeleton Point.
Without spoilers.
Without spoilers, yeah, of course. I think that the three major influences for it, the biggest one is probably Mothership. Mothership has a couple zine adventures that have been really, really big inspirations for me, namely Pound of Flesh and Dead Planet, but especially Pound of Flesh. They do these really cool spreads with 6 NPCs with what they want and what they don't want and where they are right now to give you an idea. And they're more sandboxy in nature in that they're not telling you, this NPC is going to be here and try to do this. Like they just give you an example of what they might be like. So that was a big inspiration for the design. As far as the actual town, the island is called Black Coral Bay, and the main little pirate town there is called Coral Town. And I'd say it's inspired by a mix of Melee Island and Monkey Island and the Hamlet and Darkest Dungeon. So you kind of get a almost like if you took Monkey Island and push it towards grim, dark, Mike Mignola, dark fantasy. So it's still a spooky pirate town, but it's there's some things going on that make it even less desirable than, say, the Tortuga from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Now, before we wrap up this interview, do you have some final thoughts, advice, sources of inspiration for anyone who wants to run or participate in a game of Pirate Borg?
Oh, yeah, I have a couple things to say. One, we're running a program called the Harbor Master Program, where if you sign up to run public Pirate Borg games, meaning that they're listed on our event calendar and they're open to general public to join, we have a rewards program for that. We're still working out the details for what the rewards are, but if you are looking for a game, you can sign up to run one, or you can just look on our calendar on our website, limithround.com, to see if there's a game maybe in your area. That also applies to online games that are open to the public and for live streamers that are running a game. Those don't necessarily have to be open to public players, but they need to be broadcast on Twitch or YouTube or something like that.
And what sort of rewards?
So I think for this first year, we're going to do maybe 10 rewards. One of the top ones is going to be a metal D2, a specific Harbor Master D2 that I've already designed. It's just a coin, but it has a 1 and a 2 and the Harbor Master logo on it. We're going to do a t-shirt. We're doing bookmarks, lots of, maybe a dice bag. I can't remember where we are at the approval process, but we have to basically get them all made and kind of get estimate how many people we think are going to earn rewards this year before we go to get them all manufactured, you know. But in addition to that, the best place to interact with us is through limithron.com. You can find our Discord server, which is pretty active. We also have a third-party creator license. If you want to make something for Pirate Borg, it's just like I did for Morkborg. It's fully open. And if you're a patron of mine, you can use my assets in your commercial release. So if you have a map that you really like and you want to, you know, write an adventure for it, you can do that. But yeah, the Discord is like the main hub. That's where people kind of hang out. We also have a subreddit and a Facebook group, and depending on, you know, how people like to use things, I see posts from active users in there that don't hang out in the Discord. That's kind of more of a, like a longer format rather than a chat program. But yeah, there's also games on startplaying.games, or you know, if you're looking to, like, you know, pay a more experienced GM to run your game. Some people aren't into that, but having done it myself, I can say you get what you pay for, so to speak. You don't have to like put up with, you know, when you have GM who's getting paid to run your game, it can actually be a pretty great experience. So, yeah, that's the ways to play Pirate Borg. We have 3 zines available, and playing cards and character sheets and the limited edition books from the Kickstarter are still all available at shop.limithron.com. And I don't have the earlier launch page up yet, but soon we'll be doing that for the Dark Caribbean, which is my next book, which I'm hoping to go to Kickstarter middle of next year. It's just like after having done Pirate Borg, I want this book to be done before I go to the Kickstarter. But if you want to follow along and get updates and see pages as they get written, you can join the Patreon, and that's where you'll be able to get all that stuff. So sorry for all the plugs, but that's, like, you know, that's what fuels this corporate pirate machine known as Limithron.
No, that's excellent. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in that. And for those of you watching at home or anywhere else from your ship, all of the links to that will be in the description of this interview video. Well, once again, Luke, thank you for sharing your thoughts on piracy and pirate RPGs.
No problem there, laddie. Happy to share my pirate knowledge with you any time.
And for anyone else, if you have any comments or questions, please let us know in the comments section. Definitely check out the links. If you wish to further support the channel, the information is going to be in the description of this video as well. As always, thank you, and remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. I'm going to stop the recording in 10 seconds. See you later.